And joining me now, the top two members of the House Intelligence Committee, the Republican chairman, Mike Turner of Ohio, and the ranking Democrat, Jim Himes of Connecticut. Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it. Chairman Turner, let me start with you because you both met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. What can you tell us about the meeting? Did you express any concerns to Netanyahu over his push to overhaul Israel's legal system, weaken it, not to mention including extremists in his cabinet? All of this has caused tremendous unrest domestically in Israel.
Right. So our trip comes just on the heels of Speaker Kevin McCarthy being here, and our focus largely being from the Intelligence Committee. We're on the relations between the United States and Israel and how we can help strengthen the security situation in the area. We also stopped in Jordan and Egypt, and talking to all three countries, they were all very much encouraging the United States on a policy basis to have a stronger role, thinking that there are real opportunities to increase the security situation here, but at the same time, painting a picture that there are serious threats in the area and the United States should be playing a role.
So Congressman Himes, Netanyahu recently told CNN that a credible military threat is the only way to stop Iran from its nuclear weapons program and the like, and Netanyahu vowed to do everything in his power to prevent that country from developing nuclear weapons. Negotiations on Iran's nuclear program have obviously been on the back burner for months, if not years. Do you think the White House needs to treat this as a higher priority? And based on your conversations overseas, how close is Iran to building a nuclear weapon?
Well, the Prime Minister, as he has been every time I've met with him, and that's probably 3 times, he was very, very focused on Iran and probably said to us 9 or 10 times that, it was intolerable for him to imagine an Iran with a nuclear weapon. That's not news, of course, if you've spent time around Bibi Netanyahu. Now, we know where he is on the JCPOA. The reality is that the JCPOA, whatever you thought of the deal, when it was in effect, the Iranians were not enriching more uranium. Now they are. So the problem, of course, is that with Iran so brutally abusing its own people, I think the prospect for negotiation is arguably further away than ever before. So we're in a little bit of a fix right now because we don't have a lot of leverage. The Prime Minister is, of course, where he always has been, which is enormously hawkish, and there's just not a lot of diplomatic tools available to address the challenge of the possibility of a nuclear Iran.
Jake, the one thing that he made clear is that he does think that Iran can be deterred, that if they do believe that there will be military action against them, a surgical type strike that would diminish their ability to pursue nuclear weapons, that could have a chilling effect and could stall their programming. And he doesn't want that opportunity to be missed of the understanding that Israel and or the United States, together or separate, might be willing to take military action to forestall Iran making that next step to a nuclear state.
Chairman Turner, you alluded in the previous answer about leadership opportunities, perhaps even leadership vacuums in the region. China, as you know, recently brokered a major deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia, and the Washington Post is reporting that construction has resumed at a suspected Chinese military base in the UAE. Do you think China is now playing a more active leadership role in the Middle East than the United States is?
Well, all three countries that we were in, Jordan, Israel, and Egypt, indicated their own steps to diminish China's footprint or their ability to make inroads in their country, specifically citing diminishing their technology, access to either data or to their telecommunication systems. They did all cite China's increased influence in the area as a need for the United States to step up its influence. So everyone is watching this very closely and seeing this as an opportunity for the United States to not only play a greater role for security, but also a greater role in keeping China at bay.
Jake, one thing was very clear. All three countries, the leadership of all three countries was very, very clear with us that they view the U.S. alliance as indispensable and that they would much rather work with us than with the Chinese or, quite frankly, with the Russians. We heard an interesting story today from the president of Egypt, President Sisi. And this is an illustration of how complicated this region is. He said when the United States conditioned some of its arms sales and shipments to Egypt, and at the same time was pushing Egypt to step up its work against terrorism. He said to us, what do you really want me to do? And that is what initiated some conversations that he had with the Russians about weapons. And, of course, then we got angry about that. And that just illustrates how complicated this region is and how challenging the diplomacy and our strategic thinking about the region necessarily is.
Yeah, so what you're alluding to there just has to do with the classified documents that leaked from that operation in Massachusetts, suggesting that Egypt had planned to supply rockets for Russia's war in Ukraine before changing gears and arming Ukraine instead after pressure from the U.S. You did confront him over that then, Congressman Himes.
Well, so that didn't come up directly, and needless to say, neither Mike nor I are going to get into, with a foreign leader, what may or may not be United States intelligence. But I can tell you, and I think the chairman would agree with me on this, that based on President Sisi's tone today, I'm very skeptical that he was ever seriously considering arming the Russians. Now, remember, one of the most critical things that Egypt has going is they need to import a lot of wheat. Apparently, governments fall in Egypt if there's not enough relatively cheap wheat. And, of course, they used to import that from Ukraine and Russia. So on the one hand, I don't really believe that he was seriously considering sending weapons to Russia. On the other hand, he can't afford to alienate the nation that provides the commodity that allows his country to eat.
Yeah. Chairman Turner, on the matter of Russia, obviously this last week, the Kremlin has been accusing both the United States and Ukraine of directing alleged drone attacks on the Kremlin in an attempt to assassinate Putin. The White House said it doesn't know who's behind the attack, called the accusations of American involvement ridiculous. Ukraine denies it as well. Who do you think is behind that alleged drone attack on the Kremlin?
Well, the claims are clearly ludicrous. And also, I believe that they're an attempt to distract everyone in Russia from the fact that Vladimir Putin is losing horribly in Ukraine, and he needs to withdraw. He needs to allow Ukraine to restore their territorial borders and the integrity of their country. I do think, as we met with each of the leaders of these three countries, that they do see what Russia has done in Ukraine as diminishing Russia overall as both a power or an influencer around the world. They see them now with this brutal campaign in Ukraine, and the fact that they've not been successful as impacting Russia's overall reputation.
So the Treasury Department, Congressman Himes, the Treasury Department says the U.S. could default as early as June 1st if Congress doesn't raise the debt ceiling. And the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, told the Senate that Russia and China would try to exploit the chaos that would come from a U.S. default to show, quote, we're not capable of functioning as a democracy. Is this a national security threat, this looming debt crisis? And have any world leaders expressed concern to you about it, Congressman Himes?
So it has not come up in the meetings that we had in Jordan and in Israel and Egypt, but of course the Russians and the Chinese would seek to exploit it. You know, the United States has never really come close to defaulting on its debt before, so it's hard for us to imagine what that might look like. But of course it could be catastrophic. Frankly, the full faith and credit of the United States is the bedrock on which the global financial system is built. And if that comes into question, all kinds of things could happen. Look, the U.S. dollar its position as the global reserve currency could be eroded. People may choose to invest in the United Kingdom or in the European Union rather than the United States. So I'm not sure that either the chairman nor I know what the solution looks like in the coming weeks, but there had better be a solution.
Chairman Turner, do you think House Republicans would be willing to consider a temporary extension on the debt ceiling so that President Biden and Speaker McCarthy have more time to try to hammer out some sort of a deal?
Well, as Speaker McCarthy said, the House has done its job. We voted to raise the debt limit. The president is doing this, unrealistic position where he's saying that spending has nothing to do with debt. Well, of course, you don't get debt unless you're spending more than you're bringing in. The president needs to come to the table, negotiate with the speaker, and come up with a plan that the American public want. Overwhelmingly, the polls show the American public want Washington to rein in spending. The president needs to make some concessions.
Do you agree with your colleague there, Congressman Himes, that it's a national security threat, not solving this problem?
I think if the president fails to negotiate with Congress and has continued out-of-control spending that threatens our economy, that it is a national security threat. He has the ability to sit down and do that, and for us to come to a deal and an agreement. That's what the American public want. That's what I think they're going to require from Congress and the president, and I think he needs to get on with it.
The chairman and the ranking Democrat on the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio and Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. Thanks so much for doing this interview. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake.
Thanks, Jake.